Hey everybody, Spoonfed here, and we're going to install Qubes OS. It's supposedly, or it's, um, well, what it means to do is to be a secure as possible OS. So, yeah. Um, well, I got basic storage drives. Yeah, no, that's fine. Go for it. Yeah, that's fine. Um, yeah, use all space. Okay, the passphrase for to encrypt. Um, right. Right, change the disks. I believe I tried this one out when it was like first around. And now you can use this one for Windows. I believe you can use it for Windows. Yeah, like I said, it's geared towards security just by um, having a virtualization layer standardly embedded in the system. So you have a physical hard drive which will hold precious little data as everything is in the virtual layer. As I'm, uh, or it's the other way around, you have a virtual layer that is like a buffer towards the real data that's on the hard disk. I'm, uh, I'm out on that. Another thing that is a kind of a big sidetrack on this is I'm finally watching the Zeitgeist movies. Um, and I must say that if you have not seen them, you should at least take a look at them. They're free. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube if you want. It's 2 hours. All movies are 2 hours so far. So, alright, you need some time for it, but it's definitely worth your while. It will give you a much better understanding on how modern Western societies exist. How like what makes them tick. Like the core of a modern Western society, basically also a uh, measure of ruling for the rest of the world is money. And the second movie that I'm watching right now, Addendum, is just about that. So it might sound boring, but it's actually really interesting, and it will give you a good glimpse of the structures that are underlying our whole, well, society, like the founding pillars, foundation pillars. And the first movie is pretty cool as it kind of addresses everything in a rather big way. So it's the basis for all the other ones. So the first one is really a general movie, and then the second movie is specializing on the money structures. The third movie, from the top of my head, is specializing on even more on religion, and how religion is keeping our society uh, well, back from achieving more than they are doing right now. And on the subject of religion, I've watched Religulous of Bill Maher, and in that movie there are quite a few, if not a lot, of moments in which, well, a lot is made clear. The most striking thing that I could find was that the Vatican, as it were the headquarters of uh, Catholicism or Christianity in general, had he interviewed two people there. The first one was the Vatican astronomy observer, so he was looking into space, and the other one was a senior priest. Well, the first one told Bill Mayer, well, the reason you cannot use the Bible as a scientific text is because science, as in how you should think in science, methodology, all that stuff, was only quite recently documented and explained and written down and accepted as a way of thinking. Think 1600s and onwards, and 1600s is already pretty early. More than not, it's like 1700s, 1800s onwards. And he says the Bible was written between like 2000 before Christ to 349 after Christ. That's the period the Bible was written in, and there was no science in that age. So you cannot use the Bible as a scientific literature or foundation for your debate, because there are far too much apart the two eras, which I found strikingly that I was actually agreeing with the Vatican Observer, that you cannot use the Bible as a scientific text. You can use it as a sort of starting point maybe, or illustrating point to your stories right now, but you cannot use it as a scientific text. So that was part one. Right. The second one was the senior priest, and he asked the senior priest, if you don't believe, you go to hell. He said, that's the old Christianity. Nowadays, you don't need the miracles of the Bible. You don't need to tell them anything. You just let them live and you let them die. And that's the senior priest talking about Catholicism or Christianity in general. Like, it doesn't matter. Who cares? It's just another religion. It's just another book. Just let people live and die the way they want, and that's fine. That's how it should be. That's in Italy, like the Vatican. Now we go across the ocean, across the water, to a little place called the United States of America, in which there is such a scary fundamentalistic Christian attitude towards everything that it's just, well, ridiculous is the first word, but it's so frightening for people like I mean, fundamentalism in any kind of thing is pretty frightening, because you don't need to do everything to the fullest 100%. You cannot do stuff in such extremes that it becomes ludicrous or outside of the normal regions. And there they say that the founding fathers were Christian, and first presidents were Christian, and our country was based on Christianity and God, and always God and country, God and country. Well, two things right off the bat is the founding fathers are, well, if they are in graves, they are turning in them right now, and I'm guessing they want to get out of the graves and slap all the people who say that the founding fathers were doing it out of Christianity, because they hated religion. They despised it. They are like me now, saying that we absolutely do not need it, and it sure as hell has nothing to do with running a country. And the first presidents were against Christian and God in general. Jefferson's a very good example, but Andrew Jackson's well. So it's weird that people, because America has a relatively recent history. I mean, it's like only 400 years old, something like that, and maybe not even that old, because they had the War of Independence in 1757. So it might only be like even less than 300 years. Yeah, less than 300 years old that they were independent even. So they might exist as a continent or a country, but the independence was fought in that time. And in that time, they made everything without religion, because we're talking about the Enlightenment period. And before that came the Romantic period, but after that was the Enlightenment period. No, I'm saying it wrong. Sorry. You first had the first had the Enlightenment, and then you had the Romantic. So it was kind of cross borderline on that. And then you had the Industrial Revolution, in which we are kind of still now. Not really, but so the people in that era, they did not want religion to have any part in ruling a country. They thought ruling a country should be based on rationalizing ideas, discussing them, thinking of them, bringing facts, having like the scientific methodology. But they also had one thing that they want to try to eradicate, and that was to exclude having a central or federal bank. But central bank, the central bank essentially controls, well, the whole country. Why is that? Well, the central bank is detached from anything else. It's like its own floating island, but it controls the most valuable, in more ways than one, like object or commodity, I should say, in our society, which is money. And money, the government literally needs to loan money from the central bank, and the central bank creates money because there is money being loaned or lent by the bank, and because the money has been loaned out to government, they can in turn make more money or create them out of thin air, literally. And every money is debt, and debt is money, and the interest is something that is just does not exist. It's a black hole in the whole scheme. Now, at that time, you should watch the movie because I'm good at remembering things, but I might skip over something. In that time, there were a couple of guys, most notably Rothschild and Rockefeller, who wanted to push the system. And in that time, I'm talking about 1913. So in 1913, the grounds were shaped again for a plan to push this through. And basically they did the same thing, and I don't want to compare this to, but it's the most clear cut example of how to overthrow a country, is what Hitler did with his party. Um, what he did first was create an atmosphere in which to take opportunity to rise to power. Once you're in power, he was not even that good in power. It's not like he had a massive uh, lead on the competition. No, he won by a fraction, but he made it so that the other parties were being pushed into submission, beaten into, if you want, and to grant him 1 year of absolute total power. I don't know how he did it, but he did it, and that's why he got to be so big as he is now, or he was now, or he was, I mean. So that's what the federal bank did too. The federal bank made sure it covered all its exits or all its attack factors with legal mumbo jumbo that's been signed. One most, well, funny enough to me is there is a federal tax income in the United States. The thing is, the federal tax income was never really made a law. There was an amendment, but it was never ratified. So that means they are collecting tax since forever, actually, since the dawn of time, or the dawn of the federal bank, I mean, not the dawn of time, that people are giving up money, which is debt in the first place, which is not real, to people that is not even based on a law. There were a couple of IRS agents, ex-IRS agents now, I'm guessing, that said, well, I spoke to people and I said, no, no, there's a law for federal tax income. Of course there's a law. And they searched high and low, but they could not find one that points to a law. And of course they couldn't, because a law just does not exist. So if you don't pay your federal income tax, there's nothing they can do to you. Sadly, here where I live, it's a bit different. It's actually a law. So I already fear, like sought out the information on that, because that's one thing I want to know for sure. By the looks of it, holy moly, it's wanting to install a 2 gigs worth of template. Well, that's fine by me, but I'm not gonna wait here and have it download 2 gigs. Well, yeah, I'm gonna wait here, but I'm not gonna make you wait here with me. So I'm just gonna pause it, and I will see you when this is done. So we're here, it's done. We're gonna reboot. In the meantime, I've been watching more Zeitgeist, and it's really, well, not funny, but it's cool to see that all the things that I've come up independently about how the world is fits together is correct. I didn't never had any evidence or proof or like real good arguments to support my case, other than the fact that I said, well, I know that it's like that. Other than the fact that I know it has to be the way that I'm envisioning it, because that's the most logical of things. And there's a thing called Occam's razor, which says that the explanation that you need the least amount of assumptions for is probably the most correct, or no, it is the most correct until other evidence shows up, scientific methodology. So yeah, it's pretty cool that I'm correct about life, that I am so far my whole life correct about what the world around me is like. Cool, we got some more steps before we are super duper yeah, like here you can see. In practice, this is usually only for locking a screen via screensaver in KDM, which is the, I have no idea, display manager. This account is not accessible from the network in any way, because there is no networking in the VM where the graphical user interface runs, the virtual machine, and where you log in, because this virtual machine is called DOM0. That's what I was talking about. Everything is a virtual instance of another, and they're all separate, so that's why it's so secure. No, you cannot do that as a username. Right. This is so funny, but you know what? Let me change it to something else. Finally, we don't get an error. That's really goddamn annoying. Alright, yeah, that's fine with me. Date and time I don't care much about. Yeah, so you have a, a bunch of virtual machines running alongside each other, so everything's operating in a virtual machine. That's why you need a lot of hard disk space and a lot of memory, basically. This is not for the simple PCs out there, actually. This is quite a high-tech solution, but it's free and it's goddamn awesome. Alright, so I'm going to do the full install, as it were. So you have work, banking, personal, and untrusted application virtual machines, and the default service virtual machines. So yeah, you have one for your network, one for your, your display, probably one for your other thing. Everything is separate. Alright, this is gonna take a while, I think. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this run, and watch a little more side guys, and then come back to you guys. So we are here. Something went wrong with my installation actually, so make sure you have a lot of memory, like 4 gigs minimum, because otherwise you are in a world of hurt. So let's hope that this runs, because well, I got a big flag stating error. So as you can see on the surface, there's nothing really spectacular going on, but it's all underneath. So here you have template, which did not execute correctly, but like I said, I had a problem. All these things are well, generated in memory. So all these applications. And I cannot do much more than this because, well, frankly, maybe I can run a terminal. Can I do that? So yeah, make sure you have a lot of memory for this one. Like, I mean a lot of memory. So yeah, I cannot show you the full extent of Qubes OS. For that I should have a better PC. But yeah, even the terminal gets executed in a separate virtualization layer. Here you can see that for these 3 already, I have, like, this is my 1 gig of memory right here, these 3. So now you need this one as well in there, and yeah, you can imagine that the rest goes in, easily fits into 4 gigs. So but this is it. This is Qubes OS, so it's basically a KDE environment, a normal between quotes Linux distribution, but everything is in a separate VM layer. So I thought that was pretty cool, and yeah, that's it actually. Take a thought about this to use it for security purposes, because it is in fact a very good security measure to have everything separately, but it's usually not feasible because people don't have that much memory. But as memory goes, becomes cheaper, it becomes easier to implement. So that's it for Qubes OS.